All right. Hello, hello, hello. It is the Love, Inspire, Teach E or LITE Firestarters podcast. Thank you to everyone joining. As you can see, I am not by myself. We've had a special guest the past few weeks. We did finally take a break last week so we could hopefully get more questions from you guys about Bitcoin. But we're just going to keep this as an open forum for sure as we get more people to come in and join. But for now, it's just us kind of going off the top of our head, explaining, or I know I had a couple random questions that I was sharing, but in case you haven't watched the past few episodes, we've been talking about Bitcoin because it's a great opportunity that a lot of people really are not taking advantage of. Like, it's definitely growing, but there's so much more room for growth, and the opportunities are about to change just with some of the different regulatory groups that are getting involved and wanting to put more structure around it. That's just a hint to all of us that, this is unusual time, which honestly, with the pandemic, the past few years have been plenty of that. But in this case, it's an opportunity to really give yourself long-term financial growth, invest. And Drew's been teaching us all about why Bitcoin's been important, how it fits into just the financial space and how you can take advantage of those opportunities, different key things to keep in mind. And we touched on last week a little bit on some things like how you go about purchasing it and which exchanges are the ones to use. We didn't go too in depth into that, but if you don't know Drew, let me introduce him. He's a near and dear friend of mine who I've known for longer than probably either one of us typically talk about or like to talk about. But he really got into Bitcoin in spite of having a secure day job, in spite of all the other great things he has going on. During the pandemic, he really took the opportunity to learn more about it himself, found that it was a great investment strategy. And I just kind of asked him, I was like, I've always been curious. I was an econ major at Duke, and I did a little bit of investment banking, and I can tell there's something going on there, but I've never taken the time to really do any research myself. So since he spent the past few years researching it early in the morning, I think you said you started like 4 in the morning. You take a couple hours every day to just learn something new. He gave us like the crash course in Bitcoin and gave us some great links to other YouTube creators that he's learned from and that he would recommend. I learned about dollar cost averaging and use that as like a good starting point. But Drew, is there anything else people should know about you and, how you got into this?
Yeah. So I am a clinician. I work in healthcare, and so not a financial advisor, not anything in the financial sector. It's just that I've been curious about Bitcoin, and as I've learned more and more about it, I just thought it was a good opportunity to share that information with as many people as possible. And I think that that's a growing trend right now. Bitcoin, we've said it in previous sessions, it's still in its infancy stage. And so sometimes people feel like they've missed the opportunity. But we haven't. Bitcoin has a long growth path ahead of it. So even if it feels like, you've missed the boat, I assure you haven't. There's over 8 billion people on this planet. Less than 2%, of the world's population owns Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. So anybody that's getting into it, you got a 98% jump on the rest of everybody. So don't feel like you're too late. And you got a big jump on institutions. And like Mika was saying a few minutes ago, it's cryptocurrency is going through regulation. And so this is our opportunity to front run Wall Street before the big institutions get involved. We as retail investors, everyday investors, have the opportunity to pursue some of these unique opportunities. And that's important because these opportunities have not always been available. And we've talked about that in the previous podcasts. Sometimes in order to invest into good opportunities, you have to be what they call a certified investor, and you have to pass kind of the checks and balance test of the SEC, which is the Securities Exchange Commission. So there's criteria. If you don't meet those criteria, you don't get an opportunity to invest in, the startups like Amazon and Facebook and all those companies when you could buy their stocks for a penny on a dollar. Most of the money's made before a company goes public. And so I think a lot of money can be made before Bitcoin goes through all its regulations, because once the regulations kick in, the price of Bitcoin is going to skyrocket because institutions will now have the green light to invest. And so you don't want to necessarily try to chase it down. Right now, Bitcoin's sitting at about $17,000 and some change. I think $17,400 was the last I checked today. It's gone as high as 69,000. They predict it to go as high as, to continue to go up, hitting 100,000 and then 500,000 and then 1 million and 5 million. At some point, maybe even $10 million per coin. I mean, that's over a 20 or 30 year outlook, because what Bitcoin is doing is it's dematerializing the financial sector. And so a lot of things are going digital. And so the first market cap that Bitcoin may take over is gold. Gold is a $10 trillion market cap. And if Bitcoin was to seize that market cap, meaning if Bitcoin reached $10 trillion, then Bitcoin would be about $500,000 per coin. So that's just a small snapshot, but a lot of people think it can go much higher than that. And the reason...
Bitcoin it's still had its bad days. Like even our stock market has bad days. And I know you've talked about the difference between Bitcoin and the stock market and whether or not it's a commodity. But with Bitcoin, even when it's gone down, it's come back up. Like you're talking about all these different levels it's expected to hit. But even when Bitcoin has gone down, can you talk to how important it is that it's come up and it's never really crashed per se? Right. Like how we've had stock market crashes, like, yeah, Bitcoin's gone down significantly, but would it have really been categorized as a crash, even with what's happened, what we talked about, I think it was a couple of podcasts ago with one of the major exchanges and just some different regulation, litigation, I should really say, it's been going through.
Yeah. So, Bitcoin, it hasn't, there's been pullbacks, right? Where the price is...
I hope my question made sense though.
No, it did. There's been pullbacks in the price, similar to like Amazon stock. At one point, Amazon lost 90% of its stock value. And so Bitcoin is going through the same trends. But if you look at the trends long term, meaning in 5 and 10 year increments, Bitcoin price is continuing to go up. And so if it was, a nickel 10 or 12 years ago, and then it went to $200, and then it went to $1,000, and then, $5,000 and $10,000, there's been pullbacks on the price in between those increments, but the trajectory is still trending up. And so that's the most important thing. So a good golden rule for everybody to remember is, when in doubt, zoom out, right? Don't look at it as what happened today or yesterday or last month, or, try to look at it in 5-year increments and just ask yourself, I think that's the way to alleviate a lot of the concern about the fluctuation of the price. Because a lot of people, that's one of the main questions is, well, doesn't the price go up and down? And the answer is yes. And so an easy way to look at that is just look at it in 5-year increments and ask yourself, if I would have bought this, so today Bitcoin is $17,000 and some change. If I would have bought it 5 years ago, would I have more money or more value today or less? The answer is more, because 5 years ago Bitcoin, was around $3,000. And so if you ask yourself, okay, if I would have bought this 10 years ago when Bitcoin was, a few bucks or a nickel, the question is, would I have more money today or less? The answer is more. So you can ask yourself, all right, or you can assume, nothing's 100% guaranteed, but you can make the assumption that if I was to purchase this today, that I assume that within the next 5 years, I'm going to have more money than I do today? And so the answer is typically yes, or more in 10 years. And the reason for that is because it's going through mass adoption. More people are learning about it. It's adopting faster than the internet did. And social media, is a big reason for that. Information can move at the speed of light, on different platforms, from Facebook to Twitter to the news platforms to YouTube. I mean, you name it, there's just so many platforms out there to get information out quickly. And that's why Bitcoin is starting to accelerate as far as popularity. Now, Bitcoin is going to be more popular in a country that really needs it, that's going through hyperinflation, such as Zimbabwe or in Argentina, because their currency is on fire. The government's printing a lot of money, and the more, we've discussed it in previous podcasts, the more money is put into circulation, the weaker your purchase power becomes. And that's really the big thing to remember, is purchase power. That's what you really want to retain. Not that you want to have a lot of dollars. Well, we all want to have a lot of dollars, but what we really want is the purchase power of those dollars. And so if someone said, I'll give you, $10,000, that's nice. But if they said, I'll give you 10,000 or maybe 5,000 gold coins, you probably want to take the 5,000 1-ounce gold coins, because it's worth a lot more than 10,000 cash dollars. Or if someone said, I'll give you, 10,000 cash dollars, I'll give you 1,000 Bitcoin, you probably want to take 1,000 Bitcoin, because we said one Bitcoin today is worth $17,000, right? So you really want the purchase power is what you're trying to pursue. And that's why a lot of people put their money into land, and they put their money into real estate, and they put their money into stocks, and gold. And so the main question to ask yourself is, if I wanted to put my money somewhere to retain its value for a long period of time, where would I put it? And then you have to kind of go through a system of checks and balances, and say, okay, there's flaws in most property. What's the most flawless property I can put my hard-earned money into? And we've walked through some of those, but I'll go through them briefly real quick. So let's say someone decided, well, I'm going to put my money into gold. Gold's been a good store of value for 5,000 years, but gold is it has its defects. It gets produced at 2% every year. So, it's impossible to put a cap on gold, because more is going to be produced. So that doesn't benefit you if a commodity doesn't have a cap, if more can be produced. And if they said the price of gold was $10,000 an ounce, you would probably see gold be produced at a higher rate than 2% a year. And so, but gold has been a safe and consistent store of value for 5,000 years. So not to knock gold, it's just that there's now a technology that's better than gold, which is Bitcoin. You can say, well, I want to put my money into real estate. Real estate is a good investment. Most wealthy people, they took a path through real estate to get where they are. And so real estate's not a bad investment. Real estate also has flaws. And what I mean by flaw is there an opportunity to bleed capital versus retain capital? And if you look at real estate, well, yeah, you can lose capital. How do you lose capital investing into real estate? Well, let's say you had a property valued at, I don't know, $1 million. Well, you got to pay property taxes on that. So every time you pay property taxes, that's taking money away from you. That's bleeding. You're bleeding capital that way. So that's a maintenance cost, right? You have to keep the property up, right? You have to pay for repairs. You have to repaint it. You might have to put a new roof in. If it's a rental, when tenants move out, you may have to do repairs. So there's opportunities to bleed capital, lose capital if you invest into something like real estate. If the government jacks up the taxes on the real estate, you can't move that property. You're kind of at, the will of the government or the will of the state or local government if they raise the property taxes, if they increase the monetary supply system. So if the government prints more money, they're going to dilute the currency. What'll happen is your real estate value will go up, but so does your property taxes. So you're continuing to bleed capital that way. So real estate is a really good investment, but it's also flawed. You can invest into stocks, but stocks has its risk too. The CEO, somebody like, I don't know, Elon Musk can go on television and live TV and smoke some weed, and then the price of Tesla stocks plummets, right? Everybody starts cashing out because that happened, right? It's a real story that happened. He went on Joe Rogan and smoked a joint, and Tesla freaked out, and the investors freaked out, and Tesla's stock went down significantly. Now it's come back up, but I'm just using that as one example. Stocks can be impacted by the actions of, the issuer or the CEO. So that's important to remember. So stocks has its flaw too. So when you go through all those different types of properties, you have to ask yourself, what's the best form of property to invest in long term, where it can avoid a lot of those risks. And if you kind of go through your thought process, and we talked about solving for X, that's an important thing to be able to teach your kids, how to problem solve and solve for X. When you go through all those forms of property, if you do it, you'll likely conclude that Bitcoin is the best property to own long term, because it doesn't have the same defects. It has all the benefits of gold, but none of the defects. So the defects of gold is it's heavy, it's hard to move, right? Bitcoin, it doesn't weigh anything. It's digital, so you can move it wherever you want. If you had a large sum of gold that you wanted to transport from A to B, point A to point B, it's very expensive. Bitcoin, I can send it from my phone to your phone, Mika, within a second, text message, or we can send it across the world to a different country within seconds via text message. So that's why Bitcoin is a better form of gold than gold. As
I
far
have
as
a couple questions though.
yeah.
So I know that you can send it to me, but one of the things you've talked about is really holding on to Bitcoin, like seeing it as more of a long-term investment. But there clearly are people out there who sell it or are moving it in the market, or we've even talked about taking out loans against it. So in what instance would you do something like that? And then the other question I had, that's I feel like more of a basic, because even as you're talking about this, a popular term is Bitcoin mining, right? But I don't think, even in our past podcasts, it's never really dawned on me what exactly that means. So just to get like into the basics, when people say they're Bitcoin mining, does that mean they're like just constantly buying it and they're never selling it? Or I kind of gave you like packed questions there,
No,
but
that's okay. And I can send you a video on Bitcoin mining. It's like a Bitcoin mining, like a short 5-10 minute video that explains it pretty simply in detail. But from my understanding, as far as Bitcoin mining, it's basically everyone's on a open source network with Bitcoin. So you can have a computer at your house and you could mine Bitcoin. And basically what that means is you're part of the verification process in the network, right? And so you're verifying the same information that I'm verifying, that 10,000 other people are verifying for each blockchain transaction. And the way you mine Bitcoin, basically, when you think of Bitcoin mining, just think of it as Bitcoin verification, right? You're verifying transactions, and every other computer in the world is doing the same thing. And that's how you secure the network, right? We all have to agree that this transaction, this plus this equals this, right? You should have this much Bitcoin. We know there's only 21 million. So we know that when Bitcoin is moved from point A to point B. So let's say I move my Bitcoin from my Bitcoin wallet to your Bitcoin wallet. Now, everybody on the Bitcoin network that's plugged in will verify that I moved $100 worth of Bitcoin from my address to your address.
How
Now,
can they see that? Like, how do they know that? Like, I
it's
get that it's
open.
verification, but
Yeah, it's an open source network, and I mean, we would probably need a full hour to go through what an open source network is, to be honest with you. But basically, you know, all the Bitcoin addresses they're open to the public. So you and I could literally see where all the Bitcoin has been moved since its existence. So it's not like, you can just hide Bitcoin. You won't see a person's name, but you can see their wallet address, right? Where that Bitcoin, started and where it ended up from point A to point B. And then if, Bitcoin moved again. So all that is tracked on blockchain technology. And that's what's so, revolutionary and unique about this whole thing is everybody has the ability to kind of fact check and make sure everything's on the up and up. So Bitcoin mining is basically, I guess the simplest way to put it is like Bitcoin verification. So the first person to kind of conclude the verification gets rewarded, with
ooh, I like rewards. Okay.
right.
Well, amazing.
Gets rewarded with a portion of Bitcoin. And so that's
Oh,
why people are incentivized to mine Bitcoin, because if you're the first to, verify the next block of blockchain to verify all the Bitcoin, then you get rewarded in Bitcoin. And so
see,
that's
and I was about to say, okay, so Bitcoin mining is this like buzzword that's not that important. But then when you mention rewards, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it is more important.
yeah, yeah. And so imagine if, and it, I don't know the amount. I don't mine Bitcoin, so I don't know what the reimbursement rate is or what you get for verifying. But let's just say hypothetically, you got a half a Bitcoin. I don't think it's that much, but I'm just using that as an example. So you imagine a half a Bitcoin 10 years ago wasn't worth very much, but if you got a half a Bitcoin today, we just said it's $17,000, so you're looking at $8,500, reward, and so that's the incentive.
Gotcha. And that's something that will probably be around for a long time as well. So it sounds like it's a less lucrative way to still be in the Bitcoin market and make money doing something entirely different than anything we've even talked about, right?
Exactly. Yep. And
Okay.
so I wouldn't, me personally, I think Bitcoin mining is beneficial if you have the most state of the art equipment. So like you and I could use our computers and mine Bitcoin, but there's larger companies coming into the space that has 10,000 computers, right? And so they're going to mine Bitcoin at a lot faster rate than you and I. They're going to basically the individuals, those larger companies are going to kind of push out. When you have a football field of Bitcoin mining equipment, and me and you have one or two computers, it's going to be hard to compete with those people, because they got a lot more, technology working for them than we have. So I think
But
Bitcoin. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna kind of bridge into my other question though. It does hint and indicate and show like people do sell Bitcoin though if there's this whole verification process.
Oh, for
So
sure.
in what instances does it really make sense to sell if Bitcoin's supposed to be a long-term investment? And like part of me wants to like go ahead and say, oh, just like in the stock market, if you're trying to make changes to your portfolio or whatever, is that the only instance? But I don't know if I'm just looking at it in a too simplified of a way. So
No, yes, good question. So I think that there's going to be different types of people that purchase Bitcoin, and I think everyone's going to look at it differently in their own kind of lens. I think the more you study it, the more you understand its long-term value. I think if someone's just starting off as a trader, right? I'm just going to buy this, wait for the price to go up and sell it. I think their philosophy is a lot different, and I think that long-term, those people will probably regret selling their Bitcoin. But so, and everyone, you have to look at everyone's financial situation is different, right? Some people
Mhm.
may want to purchase Bitcoin with the intentions of making a profit, and their financial goals is different. I want to make enough money where I can cash out and I can pay this off or do this or whatever. It's going to be so different for everybody. And
So
so,
people definitely do the arbitrage side of
yeah,
Bitcoin.
absolutely. My thing is, and my philosophy has changed over time with Bitcoin. As I was getting into it, I'm like, oh wow, you can buy it for this, and it goes up to 20 grand, and you can sell it, and but then you start to think about it, and you look at some of the wealthy individuals, and you ask yourself again, you solve for X. Why is Jeff Bezos so wealthy? It's not because he sold all his Amazon stock. It's because he never sold his stock. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so same thing with Warren Buffett. It's not because he sold all of his companies and all of his stocks. It's because he didn't sell. Steve Jobs became wealthy because he didn't sell all of his Amazon or Apple stock. He held on to it. So um, I think if you want to, and that's anything, if you want to be wealthy, you don't get wealthy by selling away all your assets. You get wealthy by collecting more assets. And so my thing is, with Bitcoin, you want to accumulate as much as you can. You want, if you have one, you want to try to get two. If you have two, you want to try to get five. If you have five, you want to try to get 10. You want to try to accumulate as many or as much as you can. And again, everyone's financial situation is different. And so, but if you look at it long term, like, okay, if I want to pass this down to my children, right? I want to benefit from it some, but I want my children to benefit from it, and my grandchildren and their grandchildren, and so on and so forth. Well, they're not going to benefit from it if you sell it, right? And we use the example of if I had $100,000 of Bitcoin and you had $100,000 of Bitcoin, and now we're faced with the same goal and challenge, right? We want to get a car that's worth $50,000. So I sell my Bitcoin, right? And now I've lost my golden goose egg that's been accumulating in value, right? If I would have held on to it, let's say 10 years ago, or whatever, I'd have a lot more money today if I would have held on to it, versus selling it.
Mhm.
So I sell my Bitcoin, I lose my golden goose egg that's going up in value. Remember, it's going through mass adoption. Institutional money hasn't poured into it yet. It has a lot of room to go up, is what I'm saying. So I lost my golden goose egg, and oh yeah, guess what? I got to pay capital gains taxes. So I don't get $100,000 cash. Maybe if I'm lucky, I get 50% of that, maybe a little more, but we'll call it 50%. So now I just gave $100,000 asset. I sold that. I gave half my money to the government. So now I'm left with $50,000 cash. Now I go buy my car, right? And now I'm out
Mhm.
of money and out of assets, and I have a car that's depreciating in value. Cool, but a cooler process would be if you had $100,000 worth of Bitcoin and you said, you know what, I think I can get that same car, but I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm going to take a loan against my Bitcoin, which means you're not selling it. You're just letting somebody hold on to it temporarily until you pay your loan off. And while you're paying your loan off over 5 or 6 years, maybe your Bitcoin is now accumulated. Maybe it's doubled in value. Maybe it started off as 200,000. Now it's $200,000, a few years later. And so now you've paid off your loan, you've retained your Bitcoin. So now you have $200,000 worth of Bitcoin, and you have your car, right? And you did all that by taking a loan, and you never paid taxes, right? So you can still get the things you desire, whether that's a home, whether that's a car, whether that's, whatever. But you can do it without having to sell your Bitcoin. And so you retain your asset, and let's say in 10 years, or 20 years, Bitcoin's now worth 5 million, $10 million. Well, you've held on to your Bitcoin forever. Now you have $5-10 million, where maybe I had a full Bitcoin, but I sold it for $100,000, and now I've lost my asset.
So let's kind of talk about that and how losing Bitcoin, even though I feel like I know the concept you're talking about is a little different, but I've always been intrigued by when you said, there's a finite number of Bitcoin out there.
Mhm.
And that's part of why its value is increasing, is because it will always be this finite number.
Yep.
But you also, like, people who die and they didn't pass it along, like, what ends up happening if the Bitcoin is not transferred properly, or it's not there? Or even with this loan that you're talking about, I'm like, wait, I'm gonna let somebody hold my stuff. What if they don't give it back?
Well, I mean,
That's what
I guess,
I'm like, how does that really work? That sounds a little scary,
yeah,
actually.
I mean, and that's why it has to go through, all this has to go through regulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the government has to regulate, banks and exchanges, and so we haven't even reached the point where you can go take a Bitcoin loan at JP Morgan Chase Bank, right?
There's a lot of trust involved in the Bitcoin market right now. And I feel like these days, trust is also hard to come by. So that's what also is so intriguing about how Bitcoin operates and works and has sustained itself.
Right.
Because,
And that's why, since don't trust, verify. That's the golden rule in crypto and
okay,
Bitcoin. Don't trust, verify. And
there's
so
a banner for that.
yeah, and so why, that's why we talked about moving your Bitcoin off the exchanges. Purchase it, but move it off. Takes possession of your Bitcoin. Don't say, okay, I'm just going to leave it on this exchange and let somebody else hold it and be responsible for it. No, you take full custody of your property and you be in charge of it and you control it. And yeah, will it happen where, it's happened already multiple times. People have had 100 Bitcoin, 200 Bitcoin. They lost their personal keys to access that Bitcoin. People have died. Look at all those billionaires that died. There's a hand, like 3 billionaires that recently died. Crypto billionaires or Bitcoin billionaires recently died. I think they were out of like Ukraine or Russia or somewhere. But anyway, I don't know what happened to their Bitcoin, but I'm saying,
Because that's what I was just about to ask. Like,
yeah,
oh, I didn't even hear about that.
yeah, I don't know what happened to their Bitcoin, but this is the first time in history you can literally take your money to the grave with you, if you think about it. Because if people don't have your keys or your access, they won't be able to, take your Bitcoin. um, you know, and that's the first time you can take your money to the grave with you. Even the pharaohs tried to bury themselves with their gold, right? They tried to take their money to the grave with them, and what happened? You got the gold diggers, right? They came in and dug up the gold and took all the
Mm-hmm.
gold from the pharaohs. So you can't even take your property to the grave with you up until Bitcoin was invented. But this is the first time in human history you can take your money to the grave with you. So if
So
I have
does that
all of
drive up the price of Bitcoin basically then? Because technically there's less Bitcoin available to buy. Like those people
um,
dying and just leaving it out there,
So
and
yeah, I think over time it will drive up the price. If people are losing their keys or losing their Bitcoin, I would imagine that, yeah, it would drive up the price because there's less in circulation. And so we're pretty far down the road from a lot of people who have drawn to the conclusion that I'm never going to sell my Bitcoin. Most people aren't even thinking like that, to be honest with you. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just a lot of people haven't caught up to that way of thinking yet. Um,
Mhm.
and that's why we're having this podcast, to educate and bring people up to speed. Um,
Or to get people to be like, I need to figure out those billionaires passcode and see
yeah,
or something
exactly.
like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
there's money floating out there. How do I get that? I wonder how many people are out there really doing that right now. Like, oh, here's an opportunity.
Oh, so here, I can share a story.
Yeah.
I When I was first learning how to like move crypto and I was buying Bitcoin, I was just kind of dabbling here and there,
Mhm.
Bitcoin Cash, and all this other stuff. And so uh, a coworker of mine wanted to get involved too, and so I was trying to show her how Bitcoin worked and Bitcoin Cash and things like that. And so I tried to send a small amount. I think it was like $20 or $10 from my Bitcoin account to her Bitcoin to show her how it transfers.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't realize is I had the addresses wrong. So I was trying to send Bitcoin to I was trying to send Bitcoin to her Bitcoin Cash address. That don't work. So
What's Bitcoin Cash? Like maybe
I mean, it was just another cryptocurrency I was curious about at the time. And so I tried to send, call it $10 of Bitcoin to her, what I thought was her Bitcoin address, but it was her Bitcoin Cash address. Well, the software doesn't read that way, so it gets lost in limbo. So I couldn't get my $10 worth of Bitcoin back. It's just, it's $10 that kind of.
So it's just still floating out there, like
floating,
nothing
still out there in limbo. So here's. Oh, I'm glad we're having this conversation, because what I always recommend is, if you're going to move Bitcoin from one, area to the other, do a very small amount. First, just to do $1 or whatever the case may be. Just make sure it gets from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And then, once you're like, okay, cool, then you can do larger amounts. I would never start off trying to move a large amount from point A to point B just for your own education.
You can't cancel it? That's so weird to me.
No, it doesn't work that way. Because remember, this is decentralized, so it's not like you can call your bank up and be like, "Hey, I moved Bitcoin to the wrong address, reimburse me." They'll be like, "No, this doesn't work that way."
So if it couldn't go into her cash, like
it's a limbo, yeah. And so I would imagine there's going to be some safety nets at some point to help offset that. They don't exist right now, and so
would that end up at the hands of the people who created Bitcoin that remain anonymous? Or I don't know if there's a way to really even know this, but like the people who created Bitcoin and are anonymous, like how do we know whether or not they're still making those type of adjustments and stuff?
Well, so Bitcoin, when it was, so there's 1 million Bitcoin that's never moved, right? From its existence, there's 1 million Bitcoin. It's never moved. And so that's why, there's been plenty of opportunities, right? When Bitcoin hit, $70,000 per coin. If I had 1 million Bitcoin, I'm cashing out or doing whatever. I'm moving it, because you're basically at that point, you're the wealthiest person on the planet. So there was all the incentive in the world, is what I'm trying to say, to do something at that time, and it never moved, right? Bitcoin is the first decentralized store of value ever. And so no government controls it. No CEO controls it. A lot of people think of it as like money for the people, right? People's money. And what protects the network is everybody involved in the network. So Bitcoin only gets stronger and bigger as it expands and more people become part of that network, and you have more people mining and protecting the network, right? Basically, that's your security, right? The people that are verifying. And so if it expands,
I don't feel secure if there's a no man's land. I'm just like, I don't want that to happen.
Well, I mean,
as a regular person, early on, like way earlier than you, I'm just like, man, I'm glad that I'm going really slow and tiny right now, because I'd be mad if I put it in the wrong wallet and had no chance of getting it back.
Well, that's why it's important to move a fraction first, move a small amount to make sure.
Key point tonight, y'all. If you've learned anything tonight, go small.
Yes, absolutely. So move a small amount first, just to make sure it gets from point A to point B. And then when you're comfortable, you can move more or whatever, value that you're, trying to move. So yeah, definitely. That's a good golden rule to remember is, so, but, and this is why we have these podcasts. You learn from each other's mistakes and, the do's and don'ts. So, um, make sure you can take possession of your crypto. That's,
and you talked about that a little bit because you have like the hard wallet and there's other ways to do it.
Yeah. And so I have the Nano Ledger, but as Bitcoin and cryptocurrency becomes more popular, you're going to see, different technology emerge to, hold your crypto on or carry your crypto. You're going to see the smartphones eventually develop hot wallets where you can, hold your crypto. Cash App already has kind of a quote unquote, hot wallet. So anybody that uses Cash App, you can go on Cash App.
Unlike Cash App. So remember, we're not giving you any financial advice here. These are just things we know, but we're not. I've had so many bad experiences with Cash App.
Yeah.
Just funny story. Like for lunch the other day, I did not have my wallet. Like I had put it in my briefcase bag and I didn't bring that to lunch with me because I just left the office and left it there. Mm-hmm. And I've had one of those Cash App debit cards for a long time, never fully activated it, but I had nothing other than this card and my phone. And I was like, oh, I guess I can put some money on this card and activate this. And then I get back to work and my friends are like, TeMeka, why didn't you just Google Wallet or Apple Pay? I was like, y'all know I'm old. I didn't. It didn't dawn on me. I was like, you can do that at Mariano's because I was going to Mariano's.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh. But my hesitation, like I've literally had this Cash App debit card for 2 years, but I hated the idea of using it because I had been scammed so bad with Cash App. And one of them was related to somewhat to Bitcoin because people were trying to get me to move, like let them trade and buy Bitcoin for me. And then they were asking me where to put the Bitcoin. And I was trying to give them that. And I was like, I don't understand any of this. So I just threw up my hands. And that's why I had Drew do this whole thing, partly because I was like, I've got to get over my fears.
Sure.
But I have to say, he mentioned Cash App, but definitely do your research, watch the podcast, and make sure that you look at other options. Just because, they're just bad actors out there. There's just people out there who are doing things they're not supposed to do and they can trick you. So, or you can have an experience like Drew did where he sent it to a Bitcoin Cash. And part of me is like, so you must not have had the Nano Ledger then. That's not what you were.
No, this was early on. This was like, maybe a month or two in of learning about Bitcoin and just dabbling. I was very inexperienced at everything, so yeah, it was just a quick lesson learned, like, oh, won't do that again. So.
I bet your coworker was like, I'm not doing that, but did she keep going with it, or did it kind of
she did, and actually a success story for her is she invested in, like we were saying, people have different financial goals. She was able to invest into crypto, and she decided to cash out, but she paid her car off that way.
Oh, nice.
You know what I mean? So this was right before, kind of the bull run kind of jumped off. And so, so everyone's financial goals are different, but her goal was to pay her car off, and she reached that financial goal. She cashed out and she was fine with it. You know what I mean? She wasn't trying to, there wasn't even really a Bitcoin strategy, at that point. At least there wasn't one for me. So everyone has their own goals financially of what they're trying to accomplish. So some people will cash out, and that's absolutely fine too. You do what's comfortable for you.
Cash App is not comfortable for me.
Got it. No, that's all right. So yeah.
And I know I said I wouldn't mention it, but like if whatever Amazon's doing related to Bitcoin, like when that happens, I do feel like that will boost my confidence and give me more reassurance with it. So
yeah, well, so a lot of vendors are. So there's an app called mobile app called BitPay, and the cool thing about that is so BitPay accepts crypto. So for example, they have all these stores and vendors, right? So let's say you wanted to $500 Amazon gift card. You
Mm-hmm.
can go on BitPay and use your crypto, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, all these different, cryptos, Dogecoin, all that stuff. So you can, if you give them your crypto, they'll give you a, gift card, to all these different vendors. So like Amazon, Domino's Pizza, hotels.com. I think it's maybe American Airline or United Airline, one of the airlines, Dallas Mavericks, sports tickets,
I
StubHub.
feel like the way you describe Bitcoin, though, like someone's got to be really hard up if they're selling their Bitcoin to get that stuff. Like I'm just like,
Or not necessarily hard up, just not knowing, again, we've gone very deep in far as the Bitcoin strategy. A lot of people don't look at it that way, especially here in the States. They look at it as just, oh, I'm, buying another stock or whatever. A lot of people just look at it as, they look at it with a trader mentality. I'm going to buy this. It's going to go up in value. I'm going to cash out and sell it and then go buy something that I want. Which is fine if that's their financial, goal or opportunity. Mine's a little different. I have a desire to be, wealthy and not just for myself, but long term for, generations. And I just see this as a opportunity to start, going in that direction, securing wealth for future generations and teaching the generations that in order to continue to build off it, you have to have a strategy. You never sell the family gold is the strategy. And how you utilize your asset that's accumulated in value is you borrow against it. You do your due diligence and you pay your responsibilities, meaning you pay your loan off. So if you want to acquire something, let's say 10, 20 years from now, somebody wants to buy a car or a house, okay, borrow against the accumulated Bitcoin, make that purchase, pay off that, loan. And now you've retained the family gold. You haven't lost it. You've retained it. It's gone up in value since you've been paying off that loan. And now you have whatever item you desired and you have the family gold still. And you always, the goal is to accumulate as much family gold as possible and keep that family gold, never sell it.
gotcha. I think Bitcoin is definitely very fascinating, and it's definitely something that you can learn a lot from. And as someone who's now a newbie for this, like I know, like part of me is always like, I feel like I have such basic dumb questions.
No.
Like,
You know what? Honestly, it's so the timing of this podcast is perfect. So there's a social networking app called Meetup. You probably heard of it, right?
Yeah, it's been around for a while.
Yeah, so I went to a couple different groups for a couple different things. One of them was a Bitcoin meetup group to talk to people just starting to get into crypto. And so just recently, they posted that the group was, I don't know, expiring, or they didn't have an organizer. So I was really thinking about becoming the organizer for the group. And I was
should.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you first, because I might need help is what
so. I'm decent at stuff like that. The schedule these days has been a little rough.
Yeah, so it's something that I'm thinking about pursuing, but I might
even if you did it like quarterly or monthly, that would be awesome. And we could even, if you wanted to every now and again, like do a podcast from it, that'd be cool.
Yep. So yeah, and we can talk about it, after this session a little more in depth, but yeah, definitely something I'm thinking about having kind of a continuous, like you said, quarterly, it'd be nice to just kind of do something either online or meet a group of individuals.
Because all you guys are now like the experts for like needing to recruit you some more newbies. Like myself.
So yeah, I think it'd be fun because the group I went to, they met at like it was like a bar or like a pub, and they used the back room. They had like a PowerPoint presentation. They did it. It was a husband and wife couple that were the organizers of the group, and they did a really good job of presenting and explaining to people. And so
any idea why they decided not to lead it anymore?
I think. I don't know, but I have my guesses. I think at the time when they were doing it, Bitcoin was kind of riding high, and then all this FTX and all this, negative kind of spotlight, followed
Mhm.
crypto. And I think that maybe members of that group looked at them like, what the hell's going on? What happened? And they're like, we didn't sign up for this. Like it wasn't.
Mhm.
That's just my own impression. But
Yeah.
who knows? They could have moved. They were investors. Maybe they reached a point where they were financially in a whole different space, and they're like, "We're going to Miami or wherever." You know what I mean? We're moving out of here. So who knows?
Gotcha.
I really don't know what was their reason, and they didn't indicate it to the group. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So, but it was about like it's like a group of 30 people. That's in there. So it was a pretty good amount. And the night I went, or the last function I went to, is about 25 people that showed up.
Nice.
So yeah, just something we can maybe further pursue, and like you said, do a podcast and have kind of like a open Q&A, where people can ask questions and learn more about it.
Yeah, I would love to do that. So I have to say a huge thank you for doing these this past few weeks. I think we were both really excited about it, but
Mhm.
I'm just happy that we've got these videos out here where people like ourselves who are curious or interested, but we're in two different levels. Like it's just reassuring, I think, for people to see, hey, you can be a busy person that has this interest, and there's the basics of information out there, and there's people who are willing to share that with you, and
Mhm.
this can be a resource to help people get started with it. I'm always going to encourage everyone to like, subscribe, share, comment, and continue to comment on these, because we were looking for some questions as we were prepping for tonight, and I was telling Drew, I was like, I didn't see a ton of questions. Like I did ask like a few different people that I know personally, but their questions were more general, like what's going on with the market right now. And I was like, oh, you got to watch the podcast. Like we've kind of talked about all the different
Yeah.
ways you can get into it. But I know you've put a lot of thought into this, and you gave a lot of information. And I feel like the things that you really honed in on were that this is a great opportunity that not everyone's seeing. And by us really talking about it and sharing this information, the goal was to say, hey, look beyond what everyone else is seeing, whether it's the arbitrage, which, like you were talking about a lot today, everyone has different goals. But you can have a different goal with this, but you could also have like a two-pronged approach or a three-pronged approach in your investment strategy. When
Mhm.
people talk about diversification, I mean, you can set aside a portion is for this and a portion is for that. So
Yeah.
just open your mind up to those possibilities. But I've had a lot of fun talking about this. I know Drew's like hinted like this could be even bigger, but I actually think the meetup idea is cool because I mean, I love virtual, I love videos, but also I feel like there's a different energy you get from in person.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely have to set a time to like revisit this in maybe another couple months. But
Mhm.
if we get the meetup thing, as we discussed that a little bit more, we'll be sure to share it here. Or I'll definitely be sure to share here what more is going to happen with that.
Yeah.
But you've been going long and strong, consistently for a few weeks. But even today, is there anything you want to like really hone in on or talk about? Because I just hit him with questions that came to my mind, and that I was like, yeah, they might be a little bit for the slow group, but that's where I'm at.
No, it's fine. Just so some takeaways, is just, you know, find the time. Time is more valuable than anything. Find the time to kind of learn and educate yourself. Learn how to solve for X. Right? Ask the right questions. Right? What is money? Why are we in this predicament? And you can get some of those answers in the previous podcast. The other thing is, if just get some skin in the game. Anything, just get some skin in the game. It doesn't have to be a significant, a large amount. Just start investing. Get familiar with how to purchase Bitcoin, how to move it from point A to point B. Just get familiar with the basics. Um,
Yes,
as
that's
you're
nerve
doing
wracking the first time around. Just want you to know.
what's that?
I said that's nerve wracking the first time around.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And so the other thing, so if it's if there's hesitation, the other thing, and this is something people can go and look up just more recently. If you go back, so look at two things. Look at the price of Bitcoin. Just go back 12 days, this December or 10 days, December 29th. The price of Bitcoin was $16,400 roughly. Look at MicroStrategy. The price of their stock was $136 on December 29th. Fast forward 12 days later, Bitcoin has gone up by $1,000. It's gone up to $17,400. The price of MicroStrategy stock has moved up to $190. So the reason that's important is because MicroStrategy is a publicly traded company, and they've pegged their stocks to Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin moves up, so does the price of MicroStrategy. So if someone's hesitant or they're like, I don't understand how to move Bitcoin from point A to point B and all this other stuff, if you want Bitcoin exposure, maybe consider MicroStrategy stock is what I'm saying. So that's probably a good takeaway to invest in there. So MicroStrategy,
build your confidence.
oh, for sure. MicroStrategy company owns over $100,000 worth of Bitcoin in their treasury reserve as their treasury reserve asset. I think they own like maybe 130,000 Bitcoin, roughly somewhere, and they're continuing to buy more. Tesla owns Bitcoin stock. Which one is Cash App? Is it Square or Circle? I can't remember. I think it's
Cash.
Square.
Oh, you're saying Square. Yeah, I think Square.
Yeah. So those were the three first publicly traded companies to acquire Bitcoin, and there'll be more institutions and large companies to follow. But those were the first three: MicroStrategy, Tesla, and Square. And so
that alone would, this is probably a whole nother topic, but these companies acquiring Bitcoin like that, I feel like that drives the price of it up even more. And
absolutely. Look at the comments. Jamie Dimon, the CEO of Chase, has how his comments about Bitcoin has changed over time. He went from absolutely not to, a lot of comments in between, up to the point where we're going to offer Bitcoin to our investors. So when the CEO of Chase Bank has pivoted and changed his mind, that's telling. So do your homework though. Don't take anybody's advice. Don't take my advice. Do your own research, right?
Don't take mine. I'm still learning.
draw your own conclusion. Ask yourself, what's the best form of property to invest in, and kind of go down the list of different forms of property and see what you conclude, as the best form of property.
And I think that is good advice in general when it comes to your finances. You definitely have to do what's comfortable for you. Correct. I mean, there are certain times when you want to get outside your comfort zone, but when it comes to money, there's a way to do that.
Yep. For sure. Yep. And there's so many resources out there, from YouTube to, books and, articles. So information is all around us, so utilize those tools, access that information, Google it, ask Alexa, ask Siri, ask, so Chat CPT, or is it Chat? Yeah. Is it Chat CPT is the new AI technology that's coming out. Have you heard about that?
I haven't.
For another day, but basically imagine somebody that's read every book in the world, watch every newscast, followed every interview. This technology, this AI technology is like mind blowing. So when you get a chance, maybe look into Chat CPT. It's the most advanced AI technology that's about to disrupt so many different things. So not to get off message, but just something to look into. But anyway, I'm excited about the next step if we, decide to pursue like a meetup group and, expand this beyond, just the podcast. And, we're available if you have any questions. Thank you for, allowing for the stage to present some of this information, and look forward to future opportunities.
Yeah, thank you so much, Drew. All right, well, you have a good night. And guys, don't forget to share. That's so critical for everyone to take advantage of this opportunity. I always love it when you like or subscribe, but I really think with this opportunity, you've got to share it. We've got to spread the word. We've got to give people that chance to really create a financial future that's more secure, not just for themselves, but create that generational wealth. So have a good night, everyone. Thank you again, and I'll see you guys next week.
All right. See ya.
All right, bye.